So we're certainly glad you're here tonight. And I'm Ron Ovitt, your host and author of the program. I'm glad you're here. Those of you that are watching online, we're certainly glad that you're here. If you don't have the notes, we're going to have a fun time tonight. It's going to be a fun class, a lot of exercises and things. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And those of you that don't have the notes, you can write me, ron@empowerministry.org. That's ron@empowerministry.org, and I'll be happy to make sure you get the notes. I've gotten comments that some are indeed asking people to come to their house and watch it with them and doing things. Tonight, of all things, we're going to be talking about social engagement and how important relationships are. And we're on about our sixth lesson here on the brain, and I love starting the class with this because to me, I guess if we were out in California, I could say, look at the ocean, look at the mountains. Isn't there a God, But here all we see is flat lands. You go, I don't know, But we got a marvelous brain. I mean, God has just created us. When He said that we're fearfully and wonderfully made, I mean, it's just amazing. And tonight's going to show you even more of that. So number one, don't freak out with some of the terminology tonight, okay? There's not going to be a quiz. All right, there won't be a quiz, all right? You're not going to be quizzed. You don't have to learn all the parts. Don't even fret over that. What I want you to know is that it's an intricate system. It's a marvelous system, and it works when it works, all right? And we want it to work. That's what I want you, and why it's there. So the big word for tonight, I sound like Sesame Street. The big word for tonight is social engagement. That's going to be the big word tonight, social engagement. And we'll talk a little bit about that and then why this brain. I added this, I think a couple years ago, this part, because I wasn't even that much aware. I've studied the brain, but they hardly ever talk about the cranial nerve system. But it is incredible. So it's yours if you want to read it. You can, and I encourage you to, but we're going to fly through it, okay, and not read everything. Also, you have the daily devotions and the exercises and that, so you can take them home. There's a devotion for every day, and then a little exercise, like the first one, take off the mask and accept God's grace and mercy. Now, what's that about? Second one, body talk. What's that mean? Get into the exercises, because even if we haven't taught on some of this, start practicing this stuff, because we're learning this for a reason, and that is to change our behavior, right? And doing these exercises helps train our emotional system and our brain, because it just isn't going to happen at all. You can read, you can get a magazine on weightlifting, right? Or on exercises, and you can put the pictures on the wall, but it ain't going to do nothing if you don't do the exercise, right? And, so it's the exercises really, really help. So return to love, joy, and peace, and so it's just little things, reminding eye contact and synchronization. So it gets you used to some of the vocabulary, too. And so I encourage you to take those home, lay it out somewhere where you can look at it each day and work on some. So feeling safe is a very, very important part of emotional resilience. In fact, we wouldn't need emotional resilience if we were safe all the time. It's when we don't feel safe that we need emotional resilience. We need to bounce back. And here's the thing, a lot of things that make us feel unsafe aren't necessarily true. When I was younger and I was afraid of the monster in the basement, was there a monster in the basement? No. But I went around feeling very unsafe based on a lie. And this stuff continues with us as we get older. Now, some we outgrow. I outgrew the monster in the basement, okay? But you think I still don't hesitate when I'm somewhere I'm not sure and it's a little dark, and every once in a while I have to pause. That little part of me gets going, and I have to think maturely and be more resilient. One thing I love about the relationship with God and the Lord, right, is He's all about our safety. Faith is putting ourselves in the hand of God. faith is putting ourselves in the hand of a God who we trust. Now, things happen. Bad things happen to good people. We know that. But he has a lot of promises of taking care of us in this world, and we can trust those. When it doesn't happen, that's an anomaly more than it is, the actual. And sometimes God has called us to those things. But here's the thing. As a Christian, we live in both worlds, right? And what we don't understand here, we will in the next. And some of us have to go through that. Some of us have to go through that. But by and large, and even then, when you read Paul and others in the Bible that suffered, they still had that peace that passes all understanding. You see, that's the thing. That's what we can't teach in psychology. That's what we can't teach in the world. But we have, as those that know Jesus, those that know God, we have the promise that his peace will pass our understanding. And many of you can testify to that through the circumstances you've been in or are in, that God is still able to sustain you. And Paul was an example of that over and over. So let's pray that God would speak to our hearts tonight, that we'll learn more about safety, how we can feel that, how we experience it. And here's the other thing, how we can give it to other people. We're missionaries, right? So, Father, I pray, speak to our hearts, guide us and direct us tonight. Thank you for a marvelous way that you've created us. I pray that we'll have understanding tonight. Lord, I pray that we'll understand more and more how complex we are, and yet how we can really make it simple tonight and know the truth, that we can trust in you, we can trust in these things, that the truth will set us free. All these things that we've been teaching, Lord, might they remind us tonight. And might we be able to do these things that will really, Lord, help us to be all that you've called us to be. So we pray it in your name, Lord. Amen. All right, well, let's look at page 1 then, okay? We're talking about the brain and the social engagement, okay? And the safety that comes from social engagement is probably one of the most important parts of our survival, and yet one of the most overlooked parts in recovery and in mental health. When you really boil it down, a lot of our problems and anxiety and depression, it comes from the fact that we don't feel safe. Something's going on. Now, we don't sit there and think of that necessarily. It's complicated. We're worried about something else. But what is worry other than feeling something's wrong? And what does something wrong mean is I'm not safe? I mean, it sets off the alarm. Remember a couple weeks ago, we drew a line and we said there's all kinds of stress. And when you look at a continuum of stress, you have some stress that isn't severe and some that's very severe, but we have stress. And stress is what triggers it. The problem is the continuum for stress is long, but the continuum for the alarm is short. If you've got an alarm clock that's sitting there going, don't call it an alarm clock. Call it something else. It's not an alarm clock. It's not going to get you up, right? An alarm moves you. An alarm moves you. And the good news is we have a great alarm system. The bad news is that with all the stress that's going on in the society we live in and the things that we're doing to ourselves, we're activating that stress, and many of us are going around all the time with that that stress, that hypervigilance going on. And so what happens is that this is an important part, and it's a part of our social engagement body movements that work with us, and so we're going to learn about that tonight. The social engagement system's about living, existing in safety. It's hard to heal ourselves emotionally if we don't feel safe. And that's why we want to spend time understanding this important part. Now, we taught earlier, and we're going to go over a little bit more tonight about the autonomic nervous system, right? And we talked about the two parts. In fact, if you want to turn to the, let's see, page, where is it? 5, is it, maybe? Yeah, page 5. You can see the thing that we went over before. On the left is the sympathetic nervous system. And that nervous system goes throughout our body, okay? It gets signals from the brain. And so when we're in fight or flight, right, the alarm's going off, danger. All of a sudden, our eyes dilate to increase focus, causing loss of peripheral vision. We have loss of hearing. We release adrenaline, prepare our muscles so all the blood's going to our upper arms and our legs, right, in case we got to get out of there or if we got to fight. And lung function accelerates, right, tightness of the chest, major blood vessels dilate. And you can read all that, dry mouth, stomach upset. Now, that's okay when a truck's coming at you and you didn't know it, and all of a sudden you hear it and you go, oh, I got to move. And you've heard of all those things when you've had adrenaline and people have been able to lift things and do things because of the adrenaline, the cortisol pumping through their body. What isn't good is when we're living in stress all the time and we're thinking danger. Now, in the old days, if you're running out of food, you'd start worrying about it. You'd grab a rifle or bow and arrow, whatever, go out and hunt, right, and go get some. And that can be very, very dangerous if there's not much, game and everything else. So they were living in survival. When they had the food there, they came. Today, we have all kinds of stress. We're worried about our jobs. We're worried about this. We're worried about release. And we have all this potential for stress. And that's why the class is about resilience. We're not going to get away from stress. What we want to do is not believe the lies that come with stress. Stress can say we're going to die. Stress can say no one's going to like me. We're going to die. Stress can say all these things and set up all this worry and all this fear. We can't get necessarily away from stress, but what we can do is recognize when it's happening, regulate the alarm system and then relearn what's bothering us in the first place. Maybe I don't really need to worry about that. And therefore, that takes care of a lot of stress. If we're always running around needing to be a perfectionist, we're going to have a lot of stress in our life because we are not living in a perfect world. And if our goal is to please everybody, we're going to be in a lot of stress because we aren't going to be able to please everybody. If we're out to control everything, we're going to be in a lot of stress because we aren't able to control other people, right? So we set these things up that create our own stress problems. And they're based on lies, because the fact is we don't have to control everything. There's a reason we feel that, and it's based on a lie. That if I can control, then people will like me. I'll be good enough. Well, you are good enough, you see. And so we'll get more to that. The other side is the parasympathetic nervous system. And what happens in stress is that if we don't fight or flight, then a lot of times what we do is we freeze. And I've told you before that was a lot of my modus operandi. I would pass out and things like that, and panic and things like that, panic attacks. And so what happens is we want to come back and return back to normal functioning. And so that's what, in most cases, we do. But that we have this system here. So next week we're going to be talking about neurochemistry and how God uses the chemistry in our body to put on the brakes and the gas pedal. Okay, so we learned about that last week. Okay, so you can go back to page 1 if you want. Up until this time, it was understood that there was one vagus nerve, but with the modern scientific equipment, this Dr. Porges discovered that there's really two. So he came up with what's called many-two vagal system, and it's really hard to understand. I've read the books, and I actually went and studied under him twice, so I'm kind of getting a handle on it now. But what it really means is that we have a system here that regulates our body and tells us when things are going on. And so we have this part of the cranial nerve system. And what I've done is this picture, you can see, we have them, they go down the side of our face. There's sets of 2, right? 12 nerves, both for the right and the left side. And let's go ahead and look at page 2 and explain some of it, okay? And look at how many of these things have to do with safety. Figure out how unsafe your life would be if we didn't have this. The first one's smell. Smell. You think you can live without smelling? Yeah, you could probably, but you could really get into some trouble. Noxious smells sometimes say danger, right? And of course, smelling helps us locate food when some of this comes out of, we've been existing as humans for thousands of years, right? And a lot of this was very important, more so than even today. Our optic nerves, vision, you can know, and you've known people that are blind, right? And they have to be careful of that. I mean, it's bad enough those of us that see. We still run into things and get in accidents. Our sight's very important to our safety, isn't it? And so these nerves, optic nerves, have a lot to do with that. There's another one that looking and controls the eyeball muscles. And then look at chewing and swallowing. The older I get, the more careful I have to be when I'm eating food. And swallowing is a very important part of what we do. And when you can't swallow right, you can choke. I mean, it's all these muscles and things are connected with these nerves. It's amazing. It's amazing how complex we are. And hearing. Do you know, with some people, they're dysregulated because they can't hear all the tones. And when you're hearing these low tones all the time and your high tones, that's a danger sound. It's a danger sound. And so they have a whole learning system. I took some studies in, and they go from ear to ear, and they use Mozart music and that because it has such a range, and it retrains the brain to listen. See, this works with autism. A lot of the autistic spectrum children that are all freaking out and that, they'll put this on within minutes because there's a difference between hearing, right? The hearing is perfect, but listening. And when we get into psychosis, sometimes we hear things that way, so listening is very important. And if you have these threatening tones you're hearing all the time because your brain isn't interpreting it right, a lot of times when we see things, I have those black spots that fly across the eyes every once in a while. Yeah, I'm swatting flies all the time, and they're not there, right? I'm used to it now. There goes one. No, anyways, and oh, that was a cow. No, but anyways, floaters they call them. You get floaters, right? It's interesting as you get older, some of these things. Well, same thing with hearing. And so these nerves affect those things. If these things weren't working, it would really cause some problems, right? And then, again, more with the eye, facial nerves, chewing, how important that is, and then a lot of it on swallowing. Then it gets down into our heart, working with our heart, how important that is to our life, living, right? And stomach, our stomach function, digestive glands and organs, and liver, and the gallbladder, all those moving all that through the intestines, that's all critical to our safety and our health. And you know what? You can feel fine, but if something's wrong with your stomach all of a sudden, boom, I mean, it grabs your attention. And you aren't feeling good, and you aren't feeling safe at all. And so a lot of that happens. So, and then there's... you have the spinoaccessory nerve, right? Turns the head. How important that is, right? To be able to turn the head in the visual field. And the tongue, it works with the tongue. So anyways, there's just a lot of that. And you can read it. But go to the kind of almost to the bottom of page 2. The second from the bottom paragraph, it says the cranial nerve enable, okay? The cranial nerves enable the senses of sight, smell, taste, and hearing. It also allows a sense of touch on the skin of the face. One of the primary roles of the cranial nerves is to facilitate rest, restoration, and through the 5 nerves using social engagement, which acts for our safety. Safe human engagement is key to our survival. For the sake of this class, we're going to consider the role of those specific 5 cranial nerves, and we're going to talk about social engagement. That's where we're going to spend most of our time. I want you to know about the system, though, because here again, if nothing else, just thank God for the way He's created us, a marvelous way. But why I wanted to read that paragraph is it said two things: to facilitate rest and restoration. I've been reading 2 books in the last month or so on the Sabbath and on rest. And I can't say I've changed my ways yet. I'm not real good at slowing down and resting in that, but I'm getting there. I'm starting to think about it. And they're making a great case for the fact that God created us to have a Sabbath, to have a rest. And a lot of the stress that we're living under is because we don't rest. We get hurt. We don't take care of ourselves. We're just on the go all the time. And it's been a good read for me, and I'm going to start applying some of that. But we need our rest. I do get my 8 hours sleep whenever I can. I do that. We need our rest. We need to take the breaks. We need our time with the Lord. All those things are important. And so, well, in his book, on the bottom of 2, in this book, Assessing the Healing Power of the Vagus Nerve, he gives some self-help exercises. We're going to do one later on, but he talks about how the visceral afferent sensory branches of the cranial nerves gather information from our organs. And then he says this: are we safe, threatened, or in mortal danger? Does our body feel healthy, or is there an imbalance, pain, dysfunction, or illness? If we are safe and healthy, these nerves facilitate the desirable state of social engagement. And he goes on to page 3 here. We consider normal human behavior to be an expression of positive social values. Our actions should be beneficial for our own survival and well-being, as well as the well-being of others. When we are socially engaged, okay, it is easy for other people to understand our behavior, and what we do makes sense to others. Most of us are socially engaged most of the time. However, sometimes we temporarily drop into a state of chronic activation or fight or flight, right? Or we get into that withdrawn and shut down. And when we're in those states, right, it's harder for people to understand us. You've been around. Have you ever felt kind of depressed and someone comes up and says, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" They're confused, right? It's not the normal you or whatever, And they can tell. Or if they're not talking to you because you're in a rage, right? That's not good for social engagement, right? And so, anger can be part of it. Depression, these aren't our normal. These shouldn't be our normal states of being. And so we want to get help if we're becoming chronically in those areas because we were created to have good, healthy social engagement. That should be our norm. And that is communicated through our body language. It's communicated through our facial features. It's communicated through our tone of our voice, right? And it's communicated through our actions. And so, look at the end of that first paragraph where it says, unfortunately. Unfortunately, some of us are not socially engaged most of the time. Question mark. Are you socially engaged most of the time? If we lack the necessary resilience to spontaneously come back to a state of social engagement, we become stuck in that either fight, flight, or that, depressed kind of shut down states. That's what he means by sympathetic chain and that. And that's that hypervigilance or hypovigilance. In these states, it is often hard for people to understand our values, motivation, and behaviors. Our actions seem irrational, often run counter to our own best interests, okay? And so we need to know and we need to work on those things where we can have good social engagement. And that's where we come in with each other. That's what friends are for, right? A lot of times we can be each other's emotional regulator. That's why the Bible talks about bearing each other's burdens, right? That's why we should have love for one another. And so through the social engagement system here, we can tell when someone else is down. I'm so thankful for friends that I have. And that when I'm down, they're up, and they help me up. And when I'm up and they're down, I help them up. Lord forbid when we're down together, But a lot of times you have friends like that, isn't it? It's great when you have, and we do it for each other. That's what fellowship is for. And so we need to be attuned to each other. And this is part of the command that the Bible gives us, to love one another. Love isn't just a word, it's an action. And we can tell when we're socially, and so we're there, and we can ask questions, we can help. Sometimes we just need to be with them, but we can help bring a person back into homeostasis, bring them back into emotional stability, right? And so that's important. And so the next paragraph here is that Dr. Porges says we need the social engagement system in which we listen to the intonation of voice and use facial engagement. When a person has vocal intonation and expressive face and eyes open when we talk to them, this expressive individual is also contracting middle ear muscles that facilitate the extraction of the human voice. So it goes on. And you can read that, okay? I don't want to go into all that now. If that interests you, you can read it. But what he's saying is that even in a crowd, when we're interested in another person, all of a sudden, you ever notice that? You're talking to someone in a crowd, and you're kind of blocking out all the other noise. And what happens, the ears automatically switch to bring the volume of that person's voice up and diminish the others. Isn't that amazing? I mean, that's amazing. It happens all the time, but we don't think that our brain is doing that. And that's all because of so now, if it's someone else you don't know and they're just blabbing over there, you're not hearing a word they say. But when there's social engagement systems on and their eye contact there, and it says, hey, listen to me, and you say, okay, and all of a sudden, boom, it all works. Till you get older and they can't. No, but anyway, it all works. It's amazing. It's an incredible system, and that's all part of the engagement system. And that's why it's so important. I'm concerned. You don't get a lot of facial expression in texting. You don't, and even FaceTime. I mean, you can do it. FaceTime's certainly a better step in the right direction. But there's nothing better than the social contact. And it's so much easier to alienate ourselves today. And isolation's a kiss of death. God created us for relationships with Him and with each other. And it's really, really important, okay? And so it's important that we do that. Now, on the bottom of 3 here, I put some stuff in here about shame, and we're not going to go into all of it. The next page, in fact, will have a lot, and it's one of the best things I've read on how shame happens. And so I encourage you, if you want to read that, I think you'll learn something. But what Dr. Thompson says, we'll read a little bit here, okay? But shame makes its way into our stories at an early age. And why am I bringing that up? I'm going to bring it up because it sets the way we see things, the way we see ourselves, the way we see life, the way that we interpret things, okay? Shame is rampant. We learn shame at an early age, and it affects the way we see things, right? And I've given you a story 100 times about the kid that feels shameful and not accepted, walks into school, walks down and sees the popular kids and looks again, and they're laughing, and they think they're laughing at him or her. And right then it just sets in motion again. I'm no good. See, shame is what creates all this. So I want to read some of this because I think it's critical to our understanding, okay? And where we can correct some of our own. And here again, this isn't just for ourselves. This is for those that we know. You're not just here for yourself. I used the term missionary earlier. We are. You're missionaries of emotional resilience, which has so much to do with the Lord, so much about faith, so much. And if we can't use these things to help other people, then something's wrong. Let's take what we're learning here and help others, because there's all kinds of people out there silently dying. And they need to know some of this stuff, okay? So in his book, The Soul of Shame, Dr. Kurt Thompson illustrates how the social engagement system works even in infants, causing the child to feel unsafe, okay? Here again, it's about safety. If not corrected, it sets us on a road of shame. So he says, the second paragraph from the bottom on page 3, shame makes its way into our stories at an early age. So early, in fact, that we usually have no conscious memory of our initial encounters with it. This can take place as early as 15 to 18 months and usually involves a child's response to someone's nonverbal cues, right? The engagement system. You see, we can take the social engagement system and really use it to negative purposes, right? And we can, we use anger that way, right? Don't you dare do that. We use that all the time, facial expressions, right? And so parents can do that, right? A glance, tone of voice, body language, gestures, or intensity of behavior that interrupt whatever the child may be doing, delivering a subtle but undeniably felt message of disapproval. Now, there's a time when children do things that we should disapprove. If they're running into the street, they're going to get a shout, right? And they're going to go, "What do you stop?" And we're going to look intense. We're going to look anger. But that's an isolated instance, and we come and we console the child. We tell them why we did it, even though they may not fully understand. We're back in, and that's called rupture repair. I mean, it's fine. The child will understand from that. But when we're manipulative of the children that way all the time, and there's no repair, then the child starts getting these negative messages. And so he talks about here, when mom says no, the toddler does not necessarily understand the literal abstract meaning of no. The brain is not yet well developed enough. The child responds mostly to the tone of her voice, given that at this point a toddler's right hemisphere is still largely running the mind show. The child is simply doing what his or her brain wants to do, blissfully unaware of any danger. Upon hearing mom's voice, he or she may feel a sudden minor discomfort accompanied by feeling startled, along maybe with a blushing, right? In these moments, when the parent is attuned to the child's emotional responses, no is delivered in an attuned manner, even in what seems to be somewhat urgent situation, with the nonverbal cues that balance the message with firmness while maintaining relational connection. That's what I said a few minutes ago. He's using scientific jargon. Hearing the sharpness in her voice, which interrupts the child's movement, he or she next hears it soften as mom says, "Let's go this way," right? Quickly moving physically to redirect the child elsewhere. Joy is not at risk of being undermined, even in the instant of limited self-setting when a person's mind is attuned and maintaining connection. Okay, now, so that kind of stuff doesn't set a child off. What happens is in the next part here, okay? In the next part, he talks about when shame strikes. However, the interchange is wholly different. It often occurs when we are moving in a direction of creative exploration, minding our own business, when an unexpected force of nature enters or brutally throws us off course. Crucial in this drama is our state of mind, which typically is one of unsuspecting, trusting anticipation as we venture forward in some endeavor. We're simply doing what we joyfully or very least unconcernedly intend to be doing, such as coloring or running through the house or throwing a baseball near windows. I've done that one. Or asking for a new bike or writing a report for a supervisor or entering a romantic relationship or taking a risk investing money or choosing to believe in Jesus. Creative adventure has no age limits. Or in Jackie's case, when she hopefully asked her mother if she could invite some of her classmates over to her house to play, suddenly, out of the blue, comes the unexpected shearing effect of shame. When her mother answers irritably, "No, how many times have I told you we can't do that?" Now, there's a certain shearing off of joyful anticipation, a blindsiding that overtakes her and completely catches her off guard. There is no clutch involved in the application of the brake of the parasympathetic system to the sympathetic system's energy. No gradual or mindful engagement while attempting to change the direction of her intended course. That's asking her friends to come in the house. Her arousal is precipitously unhinged, like so many colliding railroad cars piling up behind the mind's engine, coming to a screeching halt. And here's what it is. With this truncation of a person's creative movement, there ensues for her a series of physiological events, including what? A lowering and turning away of her gaze, a heaviness in her chest, an uncomfortable fullness in her head, a wave of intensified blushing effect that courses over her entire body, a turning in toward herself and away from others. In terms of mental processes, the distinct feeling of shame, one we all know but sometimes find hard to put in words, quickly arises. A deep sense of self-consciousness emerges. Cognition or thinking becomes fuzzy as our thoughts are disabled. Words may be hard to find, as if we're old enough to form them, and the mind becomes caught in a vortex of images, sensations, and thoughts that recycle and feed on each other at light speed, reinforcing this experience. It becomes difficult to imagine a way to halt the internal state of affairs, feeling trapped in a mind-body maze of emotional nausea. Usually this state will persist until we're able to extricate ourselves from the situation. The circumstance passes, or someone acts in such a way as to intervene on our behalf. I went ahead and decided to read it. And you can read it later because I think it's a pretty good explanation. But here's the point, the last paragraph. Furthermore, in a shame encounter that takes place before language is fully developed, it is not as if the child thinks of in terms of "mom's not happy with me." Cognition is not yet developed enough for this. Rather, the child is being governed by the parts of the brain, that's the brainstem, limbic circuitry, and portions of the right hemisphere that simply respond to emotional shifts. First, we develop a felt sense of shame rather than a rational explanation of a series of events. With repeated exposure to events such as these, we pay attention to and via our early neuroplastic flexibility, more permanently encode these shame networks. Thus, they become more easily able to fire later on, even when activated by the most minor or even unrelated stimuli. Shame's disintegrating effect. I thought that's probably one of the best explanations I've heard. And you may have to read that again. And I don't apologize for that necessarily because we're learning here, okay? A lot of things that I've learned I've had to read a couple times, okay? But I'm telling you, that is a great explanation, one of the best I've seen. And the point at the bottom part is that for some of us, childhood trauma causes this. We lived in childhood trauma. A lot of us don't even recognize it because it was our norm. It was our norm. But I've done enough counseling to know that it's not normal. It's abuse, it's trauma, and unfortunately what it can do in us is this last few sentences, right? We pay attention and we permanently encode these shame networks, right? And that's where those lies come from. Shame has a way of protecting us when we're young, because we can't understand why we're being bullied or abused or yelled at, right? We're not talking about the first case where the mother tones down and comes back. We're talking about unfortunate circumstances, parents out of control or whatever, right? What happens then is shame has to explain it away. And so it's my fault. There's something wrong with me. And that something wrong with me in some ironic way becomes a way to protect ourselves. Because if I know something's wrong with me, then I can be careful in the other situations. I look for it. In some weird, twisted way, it becomes a protection mechanism. Incredible, unfortunately. Shame is not a protection thing. We need to understand some of the lies that we're starting to believe about ourselves. And we need to start changing them. They were just a way that a child had to make up some reason for why things were going on. Because if you're here thinking that you're unlovable, I'll tell you right now, that's a lie. If you're sitting here thinking that you're a piece of garbage, I'll tell you right now, in the authority of Scriptures, that's a lie. If you're sitting here thinking that you're unredeemable, that you're broken, I'll tell you right now that that's a lie. Now, does it feel true? Oh, yeah. It's a felt belief. It's an embodied belief. But it's a lie from the pit of hell. It's not true. And if you don't believe me, ask God about it. Now, does that mean you did something wrong? Well, yeah. What do you do then? You repent, right? I mean, God knows that. He forgives. We work on that. Doesn't mean you maybe haven't done something wrong. But doing something wrong is different than being wrong, okay? You get that? You get that a little bit? Guilt says I've done something wrong. Shame says I'm wrong. Something's wrong with me. That's what we want to correct, okay? That's what we want to start correcting. And it's there. I mean, it's there. It's a cancer of the soul. And it's hard to get rid of, but we can. And that's where God's grace comes in. That's where fellowship comes in. That's where a lot of that comes in, okay? So, we went through a lot there, right? Well, let's move on to page 6, okay? Let's look at this new view of the autonomic nervous system is what Porges came up, and you can just look at the chart. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that. What you see is that when something happens, the first thing we look for is safety on the left. So what this is, it's a hierarchy. Although if it was a true hierarchy, it should be top to bottom, but it's left to right. Safety. First, we're looking for optimal arousal level, rest and digest, parasympathetic systems working, social engagement systems working. There's good eye contact, facial expression, vocalization. That's what we should normally seek after, okay? If something comes and interrupts that system, when that system is interrupted, and that's why this is such a new teaching, most people didn't put this in the equation. They just thought something alarmed us. Well, if we know that it's interrupting this, what should be normal, now we know what we should be shooting for. This should be our normal. We should be feeling safe, right? We should have good eye contact, facial, and we need to work on that. It's amazing when I start teaching this class how many people don't look at other people. And by the time the year's over, man, they're looking at other people, they're looking at each other. We need to do that. This sense of shame keeps us looking down, fear of what other people think of us. As we become more resilient, we can start to, and you know what? We start getting good vibes from other people. I mean, some of us lived in environments where the only looks we got weren't good, We didn't get rewarded for being good. We got shamed for being bad. We got the look. If we weren't doing something bad, we wouldn't get any attention. And so that old saying, any attention's better than no attention. And so we act out, right? We act out. And unfortunately, many of us grew up, that's the only attention we got, was when we did something bad. And so we're used to that kind of stuff. And so when it isn't unsafe, then we go into danger, into hyperarousal, and depending upon how severe, we either get the fight, flight, or we get the life threat, right? So there's safety, danger, or life threat. We should be trying to live in this safety, but many of us are living in between that safety and danger. We have this hypervigilance on all the time. We're letting stress get to us. It's like a predator's in the room. Someone let the tiger out. He's around here somewhere. I can hear him purring, He's hungry. He's hungry, And we're walking around, like there's a tiger going to jump at us anytime. Can you imagine walking in the woods? Someone tells you, there's about 5 tigers out there. Yeah, have a lot of fun in that trail, right? Can you imagine? Yeah, you'd see every wildflower. Yeah, you'd be walking around like that, man. And that's how a lot of us are living. That's how we're living. We're walking through a forest with tigers in all the trees, ready to jump on us. And it's not the way we should. So on the bottom of 6, when we feel safe, we get access to the social engagement system of the integrated emotional expressivity of the face, eye contact, and relaxed chest with an open heart via the relaxed front of the body, and we get a fuller access to emotion, vocal range, facial expression. You've done that when you're with a buddy that you trust and you're like, man, you're just all expressive, aren't you? And your voice is going all kinds of decibel ranges and everything. You're having a good time. You're laughing, all that. You're open. Your body thing is open. And so the muscles of the chest and belly are relaxed. The defensive shield is down. And our system is available for connection, as reflected by our face, referred to as a social engagement system, okay? Now compare that to when you know someone's angry at you. And your friend comes, he may be a friend, but they're all angry, and you heard about it, and now you got to go meet them. Well, and they're acting angry. Are they open? Is that, now, that social engagement system's down. And all different kinds of things are going on. And so that's where resilience comes in, right? We need to be able to return to things, okay? And on page 7 here, what happens is that we have different kinds of body language and faces. And so what I want us to do, we'll do it in a minute here. Let's read the second paragraph. In contrast, when we feel afraid of connection, afraid of someone seeing something inside, afraid of being judged, afraid of not belonging, okay, listen to those, okay? Did you hear that? A lot of us are walking around afraid of being judged, afraid of not belonging, afraid of someone finding out the truth about us, They'll find out, I'm no good or something, and we're running around like that. Right, of not belonging. We put our defenses up and either activate a immobilized, freeze, numb, collapse response in the belly, or which is that hypervigilance, or a more aggressive, mobilized fight, that's hypovigilance, or a more mobilized fight-flight response in the chest. In either case, the protection defenses are activated in the social engagement system of connection is offline, okay? It's offline. And what we need is the ability to both look and listen. We need to be able to look and listen, okay? And we can determine whether a person's looking and listening by reading the muscles of the face. Are they looking at us? So let's do a couple exercises here, all right? All right, and those of you at home, we're going to be doing some exercises. I encourage you to go grab someone and do it with them if you can. But don't go away. Come back. We got a lot more to go over. But, all right, first of all, I want us to do an exercise where pair off in 2s if you can, or 3s, but then face each other and give a posture that you feel is safe, okay, that you feel good to be with the other person, okay? So I want the two of you look and just kind of give, what kind of body language would you do? What kind of facial expressions? What do you do to communicate to the other person, I'm comfortable here, and you're comfortable with each other? And some of you don't want to do this, so you're not going to be able to. I know. But if you want to pass. But do it a thing where you can just feel safe. I feel safe around you. How do you communicate that you want to connect with the other person? And do it non-verbally, okay? So do it non-verbally. Another way to do it is, I'm happy to be with you, okay? How do you communicate, I'm happy to be with you, all right? You don't do it from 6 feet away, okay? You get a little closer there. How do you communicate, I'm happy to be with you? All right? All right, do this one. I don't really want to engage with you right now. You know, I don't want to engage with you right now. How would you communicate that to the other person? All right, so take turns. One of you, I'm really put out. I don't really want to connect. Okay. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Looking around, right? Not paying attention. What would you do with your arms necessarily? Okay. Yep. This kind of closed up with your arms sometimes, right? Some of the things, what are some of the things that we can do to be open to other people? What do we do with our hands sometimes? Okay, if we don't want to, right, we kind of open a little bit, right? How about our posture? Are we leaning way back or are we leaning a little forward? Okay, a little forward. All right, what about eye contact? Are we looking past them or at them? All right, little eye contact. Now, this isn't where you get freaky, okay? I mean, if you ever watch a little infant, right? The little infant and the mother, they'll engage their eyes and the baby will look at you, and then it will divert. Because we aren't meant, it isn't a staring contest, right? It's an engagement. And that's how we are, right? We kind of look, then we maybe avert our eyes a little bit. It isn't creepy, all right? We're not creeping them out. There's a difference between creepy and engaging, right? And so don't do the creep, all right? but we're looking at the eyes. We can avert a little bit. We're kind of picking up, we're looking for that little bit of connection. We look away, especially if you're communicating to them. And you're a friend. I mean, you know them. You're engaged, right? This is social engagement. This is being attuned, all right? And this is where we can pick up how the other person's doing, okay? Now, the danger is what we read in facial expressions, and that's the next paragraph, isn't always accurate. Number one, we may think that they're communicating something that they're not. And the new studies that have been done now, it used to be taught that these things are common, universal, worldwide, but there's been enough studies to know now that facial expressions don't always mean the same thing in every culture. There can be, and even in our culture, a lot of times the pictures we're supposed to, and I'll have one here for you, it's an actor acting like the feeling. Now there's a difference, and I'll get ahead of myself, but that's okay. One person, okay, take out a camera. One of you take out a pretend camera, and the other one pose for picture, okay? All right, take their picture, okay? All right, take their picture. All right? All right, now, put the camera down, and the person that just posed, now I want you to say, hey, I'm happy to be with you. All right? Look at them, let them know facially happy. Is there a difference? Did you feel different? Is there a difference between posing and actually being genuine? Yeah. You can see it in kids. You can see it in pictures. We train, nowadays, good night, with these cameras now, it's always stopping and taking a picture. My grandkids are so used to this, they could be running and they go, it's crazy. In the baseball game, and it's crazy, but you can tell. It's a fun exercise. Look for pictures where the kids are posing like they're happy, or when dad comes home, he's got a bunch of gifts with him, and the kids are huge, different, right? And I'm not saying posing for pictures is wrong. I'm just saying our natural expression is more natural, right? And the trouble is, many of us are used to posing. We're posers. No, we're posing. I mean, we do that at church. Fine, how are you? I had one person come up, how are you doing? And a person came up to me, fine, how are you? And I was going to ask them how they were, and they already told me, and I lost my whole chain of thought, And so we could have been there all ever. I would have said, fine, how are you? They would have said, fine, how are you? We would have been there all day, But the thing is that, a lot of and that's because we can't know everyone in church, and I get that, and we're being polite, and I get that. And it's a polite pose, you might say. But there's a big difference between that and starting to connect, right? And we need connection. We need connection. And the trouble is, a lot of times when we're looking at people, we're assuming things. Remember, our brain is a predicting machine. And I'm guilty. If I've told you about this one, right? The guy looks at me and goes, "Ron, can I talk to you?" This goes off. I'm thinking, "Oh, what did I do wrong?" And and the guy could have just had a bowl of chili for lunch and it's working on him. I don't know. It could have been a lot of things. His wife, he could have just got off the phone with his wife, and she was mad about something, or he was mad or whatever. Now he wants to see me. Thanks a lot, But the point is, it might not have anything to do with me, right? And we've all had that type of thing. So let's do this exercise, okay? You guys are starting to get warmed up. Here's the real one now, right? I want you to do anger to the other person without using your face. So how do you communicate anger without using your face? Can it be done? Oh, there's a good one. How can you do anger without the face? Well, you could do it with a hammer, but we're not talking about instruments here, all right? All right. Okay, now use your face. Use your face and your body. Express anger to the other person, okay? How would you do that? Okay. Now, I bet if I picked 5 of you to come up here, and I'm not going to do that, okay? If I pick 5 of you, I bet there'd be nuances, different nuances in the way we'd express anger. Do you think, should we test that? No, we're not going to test that. But anyways, all right. But the point is, there'd be nuances, and the chances are we may get a little wrong with some people. We have different ways of expressing. There's general things that we can tell, right? But how many times, someone goes, "No, go ahead, take your time. No, that's all right, go ahead. Don't worry about it." And what am I doing here? Do you see my foot? What's that? Yeah, what's that foot? My arms? Is that saying, "Yeah, take your time"? Is my tone of voice going, "Yeah, go ahead, take your time"? No, none of that says. And you think we're stupid? We see that. We see that. And the thing is, we're reading something, and we get mixed messages sometimes. And you say, "Well, what are we studying this in church for?" Because this is important. Relationships are critical, right? God wants us to be honest with each other. He wants us to love each other. And we got to learn to communicate. And we need to know that sometimes we're wrong. What we're reading is our own interpretation, right? And so that's what's so important, okay? And so we look for things, but the best way to do it sometimes is to ask. "I'm sorry, I'm getting an impression that maybe you're upset with me. Is that right?" Now, how many of us got guts to do that, right? No, we'll just go wallow off, right? Yeah? We'll just go, "Gee, they're mad at me," and we'll be in the walk of shame and everything. We got to stop that. That's not good communication, right? People do it to me a lot, because I'm usually kind of upbeat, and man, when I get a little down, it shows apparently, because everyone's, "What's wrong, Ron? Ron, is something wrong? What, I can't take a break from being Chuckles the Clown for a few minutes, But that's okay. I get it. But they're asking me at least. And we need to be able to do that. And we got to get over some of that fear. Because when we're assuming, we may be assuming the wrong thing. And guess what? It's about us then, right? What did I do wrong? And we're not going to get out of it. It's called, I think it falls under healthily assertive, being healthily assertive. And that's hard for us. I'm reading some more on codependent. Oh my gosh, I didn't know I was so bad. But I'm just reviewing some of the codependent literature and the people-pleasing literature and stuff. And boy, I tell you what, we can really, not communicate well sometimes and assume a lot of things about ourselves. And sometimes all it takes is just ask that question, what's wrong? What's going on here, okay? Let's take a break for a couple minutes, all right? We have snacks in the back there. Bathrooms are around the corner. Let's take a 5-minute break. Then we're going to come back, and we're going to see if you can nail some facial expressions. But don't look at the page yet, okay? So take a break and come on back, okay? Those of you at home, go ahead and take a break. We finish at 8:30. I encourage you to look at some of the literature. If you don't have the literature, email me, ron@empowerministry.org. I really want you to have this, okay? All right, thanks. Yes, sir. Yeah, go ahead. All right, let's go ahead and we'll continue here. We're going to look at page 9, okay? Page 9. And we're gonna end up on time tonight. I'm glad that this was a lot tonight, but I'm kind of looking for it. And I hope that you'll feel free to reread some of this. Communicating is very important. Body language and things, not just for who we're communicating to, but also for us. We need that healthy exchange. So what we have here are some different pictures, okay? And pictures 1 through, and each one's numbered, okay? And what I want you to do is, I have a list here: anger, fear, sadness, disgust, contempt, surprise, enjoyment. I want you to put the number of the picture next to the word, like anger. Then there may be more than one that expresses anger, right? And so it could be like number 1 and number 9. Or fear, well, number 9 looks like that. Maybe go ahead and see if you can guess what they are, okay? And we'll go over them later. But go ahead and take a moment or two and put those down, okay? I like number 7. That's how I looked in most of my pictures. That hypervigilant. Now, each motion has unique signals, right? Subtle, sometimes easy to miss facial expressions, right? But sometimes our guesses are wrong, and it's going to be fun here in a few minutes to see what the experts felt. Now, what would be a better exercise is when you see these different pictures, what does it do inside of you? When you see number 1, what does it do to you? What does it make you want to think or question or? Okay. Number 2. That's the guy with the clipboard right there, I think, number 2. Number 3, you see, what's it do to you? Number 4, different one. My mom kind of had a still face, and that number 4 is kind of that, Number 5, So it's interesting. A lot of times, what are we doing, okay? So what are we reacting to sometimes? That person and what they're truly expressing, or that person and what we think they're expressing? Or are we sometimes reacting to something else from our past that had a similar expression? That's the right answer sometimes. That's what happens a lot of times. When we react to some of these looks, we're really reacting to something from the past. That's what the amygdala remembers, especially some of the more threatening ones, or the ones that dismiss you. Dismiss can make you just as upset as anger, right? Have you ever had someone, they go like this to you, and you go, oh, no, you didn't. They give you the hand, they dismiss you. I mean, that can get you upset, right? And so there's, all kinds of looks here. Well, let's, and so we'll learn a lot as we start seeing how we react to these different things. So, all right, what did we have for, let's see. Let me get it out here. All right, so when you look down your list now, what do you think number 1 is? Huh? Sadness? All right, yep, slight sadness, okay? It's got that drooping eyelids, kind of a sadness there, right? Did you notice the eyelids and stuff like that? Okay. Number 2, what's that mean? What's that? Okay. They claim disgust more than anger, right? The clue is the slight contraction of the muscle that wrinkles the nose and narrows the eyes. And disgust, cheeks are raised, pushing up the lower eyelids. Now, here again, I think it kind of signals some anger too. Disgust is very similar to anger, right? What's number 3 kind of communicate? Okay. What's that? Enjoyment. Someone said what else? Slight enjoyment. Slight enjoyment. Like, that was really funny, Ron. That's what I get with half my jokes out there, is I get a slight enjoyment, But, so it's slight enjoyment and genuine enjoyment. The cheeks are raised, the eyebrows are drawn. You got that on page 14, so you can read that later if you want. Number 5, what do you see there? That's interesting. Fear, okay? They say slight or highly controlled anger. Oh, no, I'm sorry, it's number 4. Number 5, slight or highly controlled fear. You're right, fear. The most common mistake is to interpret this as a sign of disgust. The clue to fear is the slightly stretched lips. Other signs of our fear are raised eyelids and tense lower eyelids. This is kind of interesting stuff. What about 6? What do you see there? Number 6? Surprise, okay. Number 6, they say, is masked anger. Now, of course, they didn't give you masked anger as a category, so you're probably angry at that one, right? The person looks happy because of her smiling lips, but the eyebrows don't fit an enjoyable emotion. This could either be an attempt to mask anger with a happy smile, a blend of anger and enjoyment or amusement, about being perplexed or confounded. So, I mean, it's complicated, right? It's interesting. Now, a person just doesn't keep that. They could have that facial expression for a second or two, right? But we pick these things up. We pick them up, and we're already going down the road, right? And that's why it's important. We need to say, I'm sorry, we need to be able to talk, right? Number 7. Huh? Yeah, zombie, yeah. It's, number 7 is fear or surprise. The eyelids and eyebrows are important in differentiating between fear and surprise. In fear, the lower eyelids are tensed and the eyebrows are drawn together, not just raised, as they are in surprise. Okay, disgust, yeah, could be, yeah. Shock, okay. Number 8. Yep, okay. Okay, all right. They have contempt, smug, disdainful, right? I've had enough of you, right? Type thing. And number 9, what do we got? Okay, some said sadness, a worry, apprehension, or controlled fear is what they said. But here again, here again, it's what we see in it, and this is why it's so important in communication. The important thing here, and where I'm going to change this in the next lesson we do this, is what's this do to you? And how do we respond to it? Which one of these push your buttons? If you were to say one of these you'd react more to, which one would it be? Okay, we each probably got a different one, right? I mean, we'd probably react to quite a few of them because it tells us something's happening, right? Something's fear. Well, let's finish up then with what can we do to get back to social engagement, okay? Now, we feel like, we're out of sorts. How do we get back to social engagement? And so we're going to look at page 10. All right, now, first of all, we can do an exercise. Now, if you've got a bad neck, you don't have to necessarily do this. Okay, I don't want to hurt anyone. But this is just a thing if you want to turn on. A lot of times all these cranial nerves aren't really fully activated and not getting the blood they need, so they're a lot of times exercises. So first of all, do a pretest. If your neck is okay, just turn your head like this, okay? And feel how it feels. Is it tight? Are you hearing noises in there, crunches? Is it kind of, right? All right, now what I want you to do is take your hands like this, okay? Like that, slightly, right? Okay, and put them back here so where your thumbs are right about in here, okay? So you're kind of like you're going to lean back, right, and hold your head up. So can you do that? Is that okay? All right, now what I want you to do is look straight at, Bill, don't you be doing this with your neck like that, all right? All right. All right, get your hands back there. Okay, now look straight ahead. And what I want you to do is look to the right as far as you can without moving your head. Now, don't do it yet. If your cranial nerves need to be adjusted, you'll find that you might yawn, you might get a little like this, sort of like, it works for me every time. You may get nothing, but go ahead and look as far as you can to the right without moving your head. Now, see, I'm already reacting. I can hear my ears kind of like pop a little bit. And I'm getting like a yawn kind of thing. So as far as you can to your right? You're looking to your right as far as you can. We'll do it for 10 more seconds. All right, look back forward, okay? Take a minute to look back forward. All right, this time look to your left as far as you can. I've already had my reaction. As far as you can to your left. We'll do 10 more seconds. All right, bring your eyes slowly back forward. All right, you put your hands down. All right, now, move your neck now and see if it's looser, if it's more fluid. Huh? It is, isn't it? Isn't that amazing? And what that's done is caused then now a better flow around the cranial nerves. So that's a exercise you can do just to adjust the cranial nerves every once in a while, and so you can do that, okay? So that's one. Look at number 2 on page 10, breathing. We talked about breathing. We'll talk more, but there's 2 different kinds of ways to return to equilibrium. One is 5 count in, and you can hold it, up. Now, here's a way that I hadn't explained before, but might help. Feel yourself as you breathe in. Feel yourself filling up of air from here all the way up. And you can feel that air come right up, okay? And then you can hold it, and then when you let it out, feel it coming down, out, and like a balloon, right? So you're breathing through the belly, but sometimes it helps to visualize that air coming up, okay? So let's do a 5 count up and a 5 count down, okay? Ready? Breathe in. 3, 4, 5. Breathe out. 3, 4, and 5. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out. 3, 3, 4, 5. Okay? And so, if you really want to do it, you breathe you breathe in through your nostrils, you breathe out with your lips kind of, if you really want to do it. And if you do that 3 or 4 times, you'd be surprised how it can relax you. Now, if you really want to relax, then what you can do is a 2 to 1. So if you're doing a 5 count or a 3 count, 3 counts in, you do it 6 out. If you're doing 5 in, do 10 out. All it is you're slowing down your breathing out. Now, I add to it, Lord, help me. Lord, help me be calm. I mean, God is with us all the time, and I can talk to him anytime, right? So a lot of times I'll breathe in and I go, peace of God passes all understanding. I'll meditate on or something. So you can do 4 in, 8 out. That's you'll find that really, really relaxes you. Now, another one is a fun one, and we'll go over this more later when we teach in different regulations, but I call it the VU breathing, and I use it when extreme times, when I'm really stressed out, and that's where you, instead of just breathing, you're going, and there's all these nerve endings in the intestines that when you're doing that vibrating, it calms them down. It calms them down because we have brain cells in the gut, right? We have a lot of cells in the gut that communicate, and when we're upset, it's in the gut a lot of times, right? So when we do that, we're calming down the little hairy things in there, and it's calming down the gut, which sends a communication. Now you look like a nut. You don't go around and you're going, and they're all wondering about you. But I like it. It's a real relaxing way, especially if you're really stressed. I do that when I was driving once because I was really, and I thought it was a truck there for a minute, but it was fine, and that helped. Another one is getting grounded. You feel yourself like you just want to get out of there. You want to leave your body. You want to leave the scene. Just ground yourself. And the best way to do that is lean on one foot, lean on another, touch something, grab like this, splash water on your face. You see that a lot in movies, don't you? A person's all upset and they'll go in there, splash water on their face. That's a grounding. If you don't have water around, you can't, but you can lean on one foot. The other, you can look for 3 things that are red. Now, in this room, that'd be kind of difficult, but at least you're looking, which means you're grounding. You see, you're trying to get out of the hypervigilance, okay? And so if someone gives us a look, we're out of social engagement, sometimes we need to ground ourselves. They really, like I said, the guy that comes in like this and says, Ron, and now I'm all up here, ground myself before I go see him. Breathe before I go talk to him. Say something to myself, hey, I'm not going to die if this guy's upset at me, unless he has a gun, no, but I'm not going to die, right? The Lord's in control of that, right? And then, connect, the connecting is important, affirming. Connecting from above is a lot of times if you're around, I just like that, I like this pose, oh Lord, just connecting with the Lord. Something about raising our hands, and if you're sometimes you just need the Lord, help me. Palms up is similar to that, right? Palms up is I'm ready to receive. They teach kids today the power pose, all that, But posture is important, so posture could really help. Anything, because now you've got a vibe going, doesn't mean it's true. You want to correct it, okay? And then, of course, a friendly face, facial, playing with other, playing is important with other people to create that kind of a good relationship. Playing not on a Game Boy or computer, playing. This kind of with each other, and so it's that face-to-face thing really can create good. Someone was asking earlier, maybe sometimes we need to play with our grandchildren, and they're always on their computers and that. Our kids, the grandkids, are still responding to some of the board games, and they love it when they win too, But so we're playing different board games and stuff, getting them out of the screens, right? And it's that interaction. They're learning how to lose, or we're modeling for them, how to accept defeat and that kind of stuff, and they love it. They love it. Recalling positive social engagement. You should have in your mind when someone really loved on you or really was happy to see, and it can be a pet. The one I go to all the time is that Rocco, my son's dog, man. That dog, I baby dog sat for that dog for a week. I just like that dog. Next time I saw him, went to the house, he'd come up running to me, put his paws right here. He's a big dog. I went, hey, Rocco. And you know what? It just, hey, Rock, I see that, and I tell you, I just light up. And, now there's people I light up with too, but I mean, that's something about that dog. I don't know. It just, so for me, that's what I use. And it's not wrong to use a pet if that's what it takes. What you want to do is turn on that engagement, okay? Get a hug. If you can't find someone, hug yourself, Give yourself a hug. But, if you got someone you love and trust, say, hey, I need it needs to be 20 seconds, It needs to be, it can't be no 5-second hug ain't going to do it. You want to get that oxytocin going, but you need just a hug sometimes, right? And then get help, too. And then finally, 12, call upon God. God, He wants you to feel safe. He's there with us. We need to recognize this. We're always, read the Psalms, man. It's all about being safe in unsafe circumstances. God is our shield, right? God is our protection. God is our rock. He loves you. Get to know Him. Make Him part of your social engagement system. Engage with God. Tell Him about your problems. Ask Him for courage. If we're going to change, it's going to take courage. It takes courage. Ask Him for that. If we're being stubborn, ask Him, Lord, help me with this. What am I upset about? Talk to Him. Lord, is there something you want me to know? Talk to Him about it. All right, so I got some scripture verses there later that talk about some of the way God wants to react with us. So let's just close in prayer. Tonight I thought was just something I wanted to teach us a little bit as we move forward. We're going to be using these social engagement things with each other, and I wanted us to learn it early on because it's going to be key to our maturity. We can't mature alone. We need each other, okay? So, Father, I thank you for bringing us together. I thank you for your love for us. I thank you for the marvelous way you've created us. And I thank you, Lord, that we can learn to engage with each other. Lord, that you can expose to us, Lord, those worries and fears, those lies that we're believing, Lord. You meant us to have safety. You meant for us to have good fellowship. And so, Father, I pray that you would help us with that. Might we look back months from now and say, yes, I'm feeling in a much better place because we're learning these things and you're teaching us. So thank you, Lord. And we pray in your name. Amen. Amen. All right, next week we're going to talk about brain chemistry. So it's going to be an interesting one. Brain chemistry, and it's important. So, and then we're almost done with the brain. We'll do a couple more after that, and then we'll get into some other stuff. It's going to be exciting. So thanks. God bless you. If you got some questions, I'll be hanging around. If some of you want to help us clean up, that'd be great. We need to put the literature away and the treats and that kind of stuff, okay?